Welcome to the Career Conversations panel, Strategies for Getting Hired within the Ontario Public Service. My name is Serena Sohal, and I'm the Employer and Alumni Liaison at the Career Centre, and I will be your moderator this afternoon. To start off, we have Sharon, Gula, who is the Recruitment Consultant at Ontario Public Service. We then have Lisa Morgan, who is a Project Lead of Retirement Homes Initiative at Ontario Senior Secretariat. We then have Peter Goltsis, who is the Assistant Director of Communications at Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. We then have Ryan Sandberg, who is a Regional Recruiter for Correctional Services Recruitment Unit at the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. After that is, we then have Patrick O'Gorman, who is the Senior Manager of Communications at the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. And last but not least, we have Angela Ma, who is the Recruitment Consultant at Ministry of Government and Consumer Services.
My name is Sharon, Gula. I'm Recruitment Services within the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services, which we have various divisions, and I'm from Human Resources Service Delivery, and within that is Recruitment Services. I'm a recruitment consultant and have been for the last going on 18 years now within the HR capacity. So I've held various positions within that and moved up along the way. So there is that, freedom to do and move around within recruitment services. Ministry of Government and Consumer Services was created in 2014, which is merged from various functions, which was the former Ministry of Government Services, Service Ontario, and the former Ministry of Consumer Services. So I'm part of the shared services, human resources, service delivery in recruitment services.
Hi, my name is Lisa Morgan, and actually since I submitted the information, we've now gotten a promotion into being the Ministry of Seniors Affairs. So so it's just a few weeks old, hot off the press. Essentially what I do in the ministry is I lead projects that enhance the lives of seniors in Ontario. Number one, through safety enhancements that have been prioritized by the government for fire safety in retirement homes, and also tasked with helping the government meet its priorities with regards to engaging seniors across Ontario to get different perspectives on retirement and what it means to age and thrive in Ontario. Other than that, I've worked in different ministries, and my primary role and expertise has been in policy.
My name is Peter, and I am the Assistant Director of Communications at the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. And what that means is I'm responsible for communications, marketing, issues management, media relations, and digital communications, so things like social media, for the entire ministry. And these are things that actually impact your day-to-day lives potentially. So things like Service Ontario, where you go to get your health card. Areas like the Archives of Ontario, which is located here at York University. Anything consumer protection related. My day-to-day work with my team of about 20 plus people is to do those external communications and to kind of tell the public about how to actually access these services, how to go online to renew your driver's license. So our day-to-day is kind of spent doing those external communications. Our ministry is about 6,000 people, so we have quite a varied portfolio of different topics and materials we actually have to produce. And I like to think that I kind of understand where you're at. I'm a former York student. I've been in the government now for about 15 years, and I think I sat in that chair about 20 years ago at a very similar type panel. So I look forward to your questions about opportunities in the government.
So my name is Ryan. I'm a regional recruiter with the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. What my job involves, so first off, community safety and corrections is split into two parts. We have the OPP side, which covers community safety. That includes any constables, sergeants, or civilian staff. And then on the side I'm particularly with is correctional services on the institution side. Currently we have a mandate from our minister to hire about 2,000 correctional officers across the province over the next year to year and a half. And so my job is to be out in the public. I do a lot of outreach with different post-secondary institutions, cultural organizations, and employment agencies. And my job is basically to educate the public about available opportunities as well as the different stages of our recruitment process. And then I also help them with any tools, resources available to them to help them throughout our recruitment process.
And I'm Patrick. I work for the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. This is the sixth ministry I've worked at, so I've worked at quite a few. I started as issues manager in the Toronto office. And that's basically dealing with helping the minister to respond to any possible criticisms that come up. So we have to sort of deal with things that are emerging and also try to anticipate. And now I'm based in the Sudbury office. I'm a senior manager, and I do pretty much a lot of the same things that Peter does. But our mandate is to cover basically anything that happens in Northern Ontario or to do with mining. The mining part is pretty straightforward, but for Northern Development, we do a lot of economic development, but we also work with a lot of other ministries, like the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Energy. We're doing a lot of work with them because of high energy costs. And that's, so we're kind of the go-to ministry for anything in the north.
I'm Angela, similar to Sharon. I'm also a recruitment consultant with MGCS. And basically, in recruitment services, we have different client portfolios. We help staff across the ministries. I'm not sure if Sharon mentioned, but she does Attorney General? Ministry of Attorney General. And for me, my clients is where Ryan comes from. So, what is it? Community Safety and Correctional Services. It's such a long name. And specifically, I staff for institutions in central and eastern regions, so like jails and stuff. Very fun, but not specifically what Ryan does. He does the correctional officers. I do everything else inside the jails. So lots of fun.
What types of employment opportunities are available within your departments for students and new grads?
I start off as an intern. That's one of the best ways to start off in the government. As you know, we are a large employer and it is very competitive. If our positions are posted publicly, we're usually getting hundreds, if not thousands of resumes. So one of the best ways to get your foot in the door is to apply as a student or right after you graduate. There are lots of opportunities just geared towards you where you're not competing against people who might have a PhD or 25 years in the industry. So it's a lot easier to get into, and they're geared towards you. So they're meant to help develop you while you're in the role. They're meant to help train you and get you ready for a real position. So I brought just a little bit of a very quick summary of information in case you were interested. It's too bad we don't have the website up, but if we did, I tell you that you can go to our website, which is ontario.ca/careers. So ontario.ca/careers. On the left-hand side, you will see a bar of different options, and I would click on youth and new professionals. Once you're there, there's a lot of variety of different programs that we have, but specifically I want to touch upon 3 of our main ones. The first one is the Ontario Internship Program, which is what I was a part of many years ago. Basically, you have to be within 2 years of graduation. It could be a graduation from a degree, diploma, or a post-grad certificate. Usually the application process starts in January, like beginning of January. So I believe it's closed for this year, but like I said, you have 2 years until after you graduate, so many of you can start planning for the next year. Because these processes are very competitive, there's tons of people who apply. That's why they have to start so early, because they start the application submission in January, they do the written test in February, interviews in March and April, and the placements actually begin in July. So that's when you graduate. So if I were you, if you're still enrolled in university, in your last year, January of your last year, start applying for a lot of these internships, not just with our government, but other governments like the federal programs. They also start very early on, like half a year before, so that right when you graduate, you can segue into your internship. They have different lines of internships, so business, financial planning, communications, HR, labor relations, IT, policy, program and service delivery. So those are the big branches of areas that you could apply to. And the second internship I want to talk about is an internship for internationally trained individuals. So if you have overseas experience and you're just doing some education here, you can apply for this internship. It's about 6 months in length, and it is paid. And again, it's a great opportunity to give you some Canadian experience. And lastly, I want to talk about the Summer Employment Experience Program. So basically, these are already posted right now. They close at different stages. So different job categories will have different closing dates. So I would definitely go online now to take a look. For example, business and technology positions are closing January 31st. And then, other type of positions are going to close later on. So these are posted up until March 28th, but they're not all closing March 28th. So definitely start looking now when the field of interest that you are interested in will be closing. So that's posted right now if you're interested. These are in the summer. They're usually about a month or 2 months long. And again, great way to get your foot in the door. They're at minimum wage, but again, it's the experience and the networking that's really important. And for this, you have to be a student or you're 6 months within graduation. Everything is online. There's lots of little details online, so I would really encourage you to take a look at our website when you go home today. But it doesn't necessarily say full-time. I looked for that. It doesn't say that.
And Angela, maybe I could add to that. I'm also a former intern through the Ontario internship program, so that was kind of my foot in the door about 15 years ago into government. And for me at the time, it was a great way to kind of break in. I remember a lot of my peers asking me, who did you know to get your job in the government? I suspect that is still the perception out there for many folks, but it was definitely a way for me to kind of compete with a lot of talented people. But they do take individual streams through that OIP program, and it's a 2-year guaranteed contract, I know paid. As a communications person back then, I think the starting salary was $36,000 a year. Now it's about $48,000, which doesn't sound like a ton of money, but if you're looking at a communications type career, that's actually pretty good right out of school. So again, if you're looking for true anecdotes of someone who actually went through the program, was successful, and was able to actually turn that into permanent employment, I would argue that approximately 80% of all the folks that come in through the internship program actually end up landing a full-time opportunity in the government. So if that's your goal, if this is something that you see as a way of kind of doing something long-term and building an actual career, that is one great way to kind of take that initial step as a student based on the position you guys are in.
Like you mentioned, we hire a lot of interns. It's a great opportunity to get into the OPS. I think there's only one intern that I've ever worked with that didn't land a permanent job with the OPS, and that was because they didn't want to. So we hire quite a few. Typically, we'll have every year we'll have one in communications branch, and there's other ones in the ministry too. And we also tend to hire summer students, 4 in my branch, 2 in Toronto and 2 in Sudbury, and then of course there's more across the ministry. One thing to point out too is not all internships or summer employment opportunities are in Toronto. And that's a really important thing too. And it's sometimes easier to get in places like Sudbury or Guelph or Peterborough or Kingston, places like that. So you shouldn't just restrict yourself and think that it's only in Toronto.
Sure. So with the Ministry of Community Safety Correctional Services, as I mentioned, we currently have a mandate to hire about 2,000 correctional officers across the province. Generally, the way these work are these are fixed-term on-call positions. The basic minimum for these positions is only a high school diploma, so we do a lot of recruitment at the post-secondary institutions with the idea that it's a great asset to have, background in criminal justice, criminology. A couple of the other big programs that we recruit for are sociology, psychology. It's the idea that you have the mindset and the rehabilitative perspective that we're really looking for out of our next generation of correctional officers. In terms of some of the other opportunities that are available, I know that certain institutions or certain post-secondary institutions have partnerships with our jails and detention centers in the area, and so there is an opportunity to do a placement sometimes with one of our institutions. Generally, the placements are unpaid; they're more of a co-op type of placement. So, if you were interested, what you would do is you would speak with your program coordinator and see if there's any opportunity if your program does have co-op opportunities. I know another popular way, as my peers mentioned, is to get in as a summer student. This is actually how I started my career with the OPS. I started as a summer student while I was in university with the Ministry of Training. Now, obviously, I work in a very different area, but again, it's that great opportunity for networking and to learn the skills, policies, procedures that the OPS ingrains in you. So it's a great opportunity to get in that way. And I believe that covers it for corrections.
Again, trying to put myself into your position. Before I got into government, I never took one political course. I had no government background. My degree was in psychology, and then I did a postgrad in corporate communications. So keeping that in mind, don't feel like you need to limit yourself with any particular stream, regardless of what you're currently studying right now, knowing that the OPS is about 65,000 people. And of those 65,000 people within the government right now, approximately 20% of those are eligible for retirement within the next 5 years. So we definitely talk about how, it's tough to get a job right now, the market is difficult. Those demographics are slowly changing. We've got this entire group of folks that will be eligible to leave. What that'll mean for the Ontario Public Service is folks that are currently there are going to need to take a step forward, right, and move up and kind of take on some additional responsibilities. But it also means opportunities for folks coming in right around this time right now, right? So there will be opportunity for new people where some of that knowledge transfer is going to happen because we are the ones that are going to lead the government going forward. So that's something you want to keep in mind. From a communications perspective, again, just the realm that I'm in, like a lot of the panelists here, I've been in a couple of different ministries, so there's a lot of opportunity to kind of move around once you're in somewhere like the Ontario Public Service. The key is to really kind of focus on your transferable skills, right? So regardless of what you are interviewing for or what you're interested in, almost every single job will have a lot of those core skill sets that will be required to actually get into the government. So things like strategic thinking, strong writing, project management, the ability to work with other folks, and then of course when you're talking government, political acuity. So again, I mentioned I never had any kind of public or political training previously, but having that political acuity and understanding the difference between what the Ontario Public Service does and how that works with our elected officials becomes a really important skill set. And if that's something you can bring into the government, I would say that would give you a leg up on a lot of people you're competing against. With regards to access points into the OPS, it would seem to me that you've heard it pretty much all now. So anything that I would add is not anchored so much in what you've heard. Just a recap, there's the Ontario Internship Program. That is how I got into government, and I've built my career up. I started out as a communications intern in the Ministry of Northern Development in mind. So it's a big organization in terms of the OPS at large, but there's lots of opportunities that come with that, and that's one of the things I love about it. The Ministry of Seniors Affairs uses the same kinds of avenues in terms of summer experience opportunities, as well as interns and other kinds of just general recruitment strategies to fill vacancies within our organization. But at this point in my career, which I would say I've loved, I've worked in many places, and I've worked on many things. The first time I was on this panel, I was working on homelessness. Since then, I've worked on the legislation around Sexual Violence and Harassment Action Plan Act. And now I'm working on legislative reviews of retirement homes. And I've worked in other ministries and done a number of things on a number of portfolios, including education policy and so forth, and curriculum policy. So I say that because essentially my experience has been anchored in an openness to learning and growing, and the opportunities that allowed that to happen were present at different points in my career. I've had people reach out to me. I've also competed in ways that have allowed me to just sort of broaden my own horizons. I started as a comms intern and moved into policy, and that took me to education, which was a passionate interest of mine at that time. So as you're thinking about what it is that you would like to do, and you're thinking about the kind of career you would like to build, I think it's worth considering being open to the opportunities that will get you the skill sets, the experience, and knowledge to know whether or not what you imagine and anticipate is what you'd like to pursue, or if it's not, because that's a valuable piece of learning as well.
OPS Careers website. It's also a good resource tool for anybody who's never been on there or has never or doesn't know about the recruitment process within the government. It does have information on our hiring process. It has our recruitment philosophy. It has a resume writing guide, which can assist you in how to prepare for in case you are called for an interview or applying. So it gives you a lot of information on how to apply, the hiring steps and stages, interview tips, and it does have a job alert. So if you do have a focus of what you want to get into, it does have that opportunity to give you the job alerts. I think it's every 3 months or 6 months you have to go in and update it, but it does have that. As mentioned here, I came in as a 2-week temporary assignment, thinking it was going to be a 2-week temporary assignment on a project, and I ended up sticking around for almost 18 years. So if you ever hired for a short-term assignment, take it, run with it, because anything can happen. You could end up being there for 5 years, 10 years, or like me, going on 18 years. So even if you are coming on as a summer student for just the summer, something can happen where they need you, you get a contract which is outside the summer experience program. You could end up sticking around on a contract that could last you a lifetime, maybe permanent assignment. So stay positive.
Just to summarize a little bit, so definitely visiting the OPS website, looking at the internship opportunities. Many times what happens is, sometimes we don't always consider what career we want to go into until we're really close to graduation. So I'm hoping that the points brought up today are really going to encourage you to start looking at those internship summer opportunities, whether they're mandatory for your program or not, because it seems like a wonderful way to get your foot in the door. Another thing as well was, looking outside of the GTA area, right? Exploring options that are a little bit further that other people may not be looking for. Your competition is going to be less, the amount of people applying will be less as well, so it can definitely open up more opportunities for you. And last but not least is, exploring other options as well. So sometimes you may have a vision of where you want to end up, but that may not be possible right now. So really taking a look to see what other options are out there, because you never know, you may end up loving something that you never considered before.
Toronto, in GTA, is very competitive. Everyone knows that, right? So you have to have an open mind. You may want to start in the OPS outside that whole region and eventually come back into Toronto. I've had that with a colleague of mine who's new to the OPS and was dying to become permanent. And I suggested, you got to think outside the box. It's very competitive within the Toronto area. He actually traveled to Kingston, Ontario to get a job. Applied again from Kingston to a Toronto job. That's how he ended up coming back, being permanent in the OPS. So you got to really think of outside the box and not just thinking, Toronto and GTA, because it can be very competitive.
So I have one person who's worked for us before I can bring him, but I have an open position right now. And it's so hard to find people with community skills outside of Toronto. But if you get in Sudbury, especially if you get in permanent, you can switch to another city.
Yeah.
So, we have a branch, or half of my branches in Toronto, so there are opportunities that all of us come up there. But they're very competitive. So.
Yeah, if you take a job in Sudbury, you do have that option and become permanent to transfer.
Yeah, I actually transferred the opposite way. I went from Toronto to Sudbury.
Transfer. Once you get in, you can put in that request to transfer maybe back to where your family lives or wherever your interest is to move, right?
If I can just add something to that, that's actually how I got my start with the OPS. I'm originally from Northern Ontario, and I was living in Southern Ontario after school. And when a contract opportunity came up, seasonal position, I went back to Thunder Bay. That was my entry into the OPS. Again, as they were mentioning, competition's lower and the opportunities there just don't match the competition. So it was a great point of entry for me, and within 6 months I was able to compete for a position, and I ended up back in Southern Ontario. So again, the opportunities are there if you're aware and you're looking for them. You just sometimes have to keep an eye out for them.
And for those short-term opportunities too that we mentioned, those don't tend to get advertised. So I encourage people, like if you're interested in communications, you should be sending your resume to communications managers at the different ministries, because things come up. If I get a resume that looks good, I might not have something available right now, but I do get asked by other managers too, if I know anybody, and I've gotten several people jobs that way. So
that's actually a really great point that you make. I had kind of written down here as a note that the hidden job market. I think we've all talked a lot about very formal opportunities to get into the OPS. I'm sure you'll hear stories and examples of approximately half the jobs or half the people that get hired are job postings that never make it into the real world. There are through word of mouth, or they are short-term opportunities where somebody has proactively reached out to us and said, hey, I'm looking for this, and maybe 2 months down the road, I'm like, oh yeah, I need a web designer. That resume happened to come across my desk. I reach back, I make that connection. I would argue 1 in 2 of the jobs of the people that I've hired have happened that way as opposed to through formal competition.
That's a lot of the way our system works. So, we have collective agreements. We have lots of policies. So for permanent jobs, I know permanent is like the ideal of, when you graduate, but, that's very difficult because those have to go through very formal processes through me and Sharon, and those are tough processes to get through. But, as the managers before you are telling you, a lot for them, when they have short-term vacancies, they can actually just hire off the street. So they could see you.
Well, maybe not exactly off the street.
Well, that's kind of the wording we use.
I don't exactly hire off the street, but it's definitely net new people to the government, yes.
Yeah, and that a lot is done through informal interviews. It's done through opportunities like this. It's done through networking. It's done through managers passing on resumes to another manager. So don't discount that, and don't be discouraged by short-term assignments. We all, at some point, started off on contract. It's very rare for somebody to jump into any government organization and be permanent right away, unless you're like a psychologist. It's like a really difficult to fill position.
And I would add too, like the 2 that I'm hiring right now, I can only offer for 6 months right now because of my 2 permanent staff are on secondment. But I know one of them, they're going to be posting it permanently within the next 6 months. And so I think she'll probably get it, so I'll be able to then post that position permanently, and I can post it just internally. So if you're acting in the position, you can apply. So.
to what are some of the successful ways that individuals have reached out to you and built connections with you that you could recommend to our students?
The OPS, we have this tool called InfoGo. So if you Google InfoGo, it is a directory of everybody who works in the government. You can Google any of us and our numbers will come up. Our email addresses will come up. You could.
I'm on the LinkedIn.
Oh, okay.
Good. Right.
So, you know, a lot of us, you know, we're like, because we're a public body, everything's disclosed to the public realm. So you could literally email any manager in the OPS, any director, and say, do you want to have coffee with me? You know, and the funny thing is, they probably will. If you do that to, you know, Rogers Communication, they might not, because they're a private company, you know, they're probably very busy. But in the government, we do have a very different culture where, you know, we have, you know, students or any professional who's interested in a particular field, in our field, and wants to hear about what we do. Most of us would love to sit down and talk to you. So don't be intimidated by that, especially in the OPS. We actually have the culture for that. And we ourselves do that too. And if I was looking for a new career, I would call up a manager and say, or email them and say, look, I'm really interested in this field. Can I come by and sit down with you for 15 minutes? And most people would be okay with that. So I do encourage that. Just very quickly, you know, and also that, you know, when you're networking, I know the ultimate goal is to get a job, but sometimes when you have informational interviews or you do network, it may give you something else useful, not necessarily a job. It might lead to one. So for example, information about an organization. One time I met with a director. This is when I was a student. I met with a director just as an informational interview. He didn't have any opportunities available for me, which is fine. So we just chatted about, you know, what the OPS HR world looked like, and he gave me this, I think, like a HR plan, an internal document to read and just understand what the organization looks like. And so months later, I sat in my internship interview for the internship, and I was speaking about that plan in my interview, how, you know, trying to show that I understand the organization, you know, the research part. And it turns out the person who was on the panel wrote that document and was impressed by it. So it was pure luck. But these things happen, and networking is part of that. It's not just about getting you a job, but it might lead to one day. It might give you information that you can use to impress somebody one day. And so, you know, it's one of the easiest way to research about an organization.
I think just to emphasize what I mentioned before, because we don't have a lot in communications, real networking opportunities, but we do often look for people for short-term jobs, and we have a really difficult time sometimes finding people who are available, because people who are already working in the government, you know, they might have a longer-term contract or they might have a permanent job. They might be interested in doing a secondment, but a lot of times when it's just a short-term thing, like the two that I have, it's difficult to get them.
And you need someone right away.
Yeah, you know, I don't have time to wait, you know, 3 months, because they might be back in 3 months. So, like I said, you know, sending your resume around, if you can get even just one or two managers to actually take the time, and that can be really worth it. Because one of the important things about government, particularly in communications, is it's very different from communications in the private sector. So we often are looking for people who have that understanding. If you can get some actual experience in it, that's great. So that's why getting these short-term assignments is really good. Because if somebody comes to me later and says, well, I work for the OPS, even if it's just for 6 months, then I know that they understand our approvals processes, which are very different from the private sector. And a lot of the issues that we deal with are very different, and the way we approach things are different. So if I know that you have that experience, that's worth just gold.
So within correctional services, right now, due to the specialized training and the extensive testing that new recruits have to go through, informal networking opportunities to actually lead to positions is a bit difficult, as everybody does need to go through that formal process that was mentioned earlier. However, that being said, again, sometimes it's not the idea of necessarily getting a job right from the networking session, but getting the information to apply for that job or to proceed through a recruitment process, which is really beneficial. I can say I do a lot of outreach with different post-secondary institutions. So last week I was just here for a information session. The week before that I was at a job fair. A lot of organizations, particularly again with the OPS, we hold these different information sessions, and it's a great opportunity for you to find out what tools are available for you to help you get that foot in the door, or find out what, you know, where we're looking for particularly, so that you can customize your resume accordingly. These are huge key points, again, that it's the idea of sharing information, not necessarily getting that job right off the bat, but getting the information that you need to get the job. So that's a really important aspect of it as well. The other thing I want to say is not so much on the institution side, but within probation parole. I know a lot of the probation parole officers have actually gotten their start through, again, volunteering, which is done through networking. So they reach out directly to a different probation parole office that they may be interested in working in. And again, sometimes they may say, look, I have a deep interest in working in this field. I have, or pursuing an education in, criminology, sociology. And again, sometimes they'll get brought on a volunteer, which turns into a contract, which will turn into, again, a full-time position quite often. So sometimes it's just a matter of reaching out, as my peer said, to really get that initial entry in the door, find out the information that you need, and then proceed from there.
I just want to build on some of the tidbits I think you guys have heard that you can take away. Things like our information is public. So our emails, our titles, our information is online for you to search whenever you want. So you would go forward and kind of do that. What I would say, though, about the people that have been most successful in reaching out to me, so I actually make it a commitment, it's in my personal learning plan to meet with 2 people externally every single month. So every month I'm meeting with 2 people that are not in the government to talk to them about opportunities. The ones that have stood out for me the most, or the ones that actually kind of catch my attention, are the ones that actually come with a purposeful conversation. So I get a lot of people that reach out to me and say, hey, I want to talk about jobs and I want to talk about the government. And then they show up in front of me and they're sitting there going, so what do you do? That's not what this conversation is about, right? So I would absolutely encourage you to be proactive about reaching out and trying to make connections with people that you think would give you their time, because I would agree most of the times they will give you their time. They will make time for you. But you got to do your research before you show up. That means knowing a little bit about the ministry, perhaps, of the person that you're meeting with, knowing a little bit about the work they do, and really understanding what you bring to the table and how you're going to sell that to me. So I've got folks that come in and have done a really good job at saying, hey, I understand you are responsible for digital communications in your ministry. Let me quickly walk you through what I've done, how I've established myself as an expert, and how I can help you. And like I said, even if there isn't an opportunity right at that time, 2 months down the road when that opens up, or maybe 6 months down the road when there actually is a full-time permanent or contract competition, I remember that person. That person stands out. That person's resume gets kept and put at the top of the pile because I know I can go to that guy or gal later because they were able to demonstrate that. They didn't come to have a chit-chat conversation. You're busy, we're busy. Somebody said we're not as busy as private sector. I would argue I'm a 24/7 operation. So I got my phones right in front of me here. So take the time to do the research and the preparation before you come to one of these conversations. Are they good? Yes, but you need to do your part too.
I've taken a sort of different approach to my own career path. Mine is less formulaic and much more open. And so for me, that has been really fruitful. It has allowed me to tap into spaces and opportunities that I couldn't fathom and then learn I love, and always allowed me to continuously grow and thrive, which is basically my measure. So I say that because I've had many people connect with me. I've done mentoring, I've done coaching, and continue to do so. But in doing so, I think people have different states of readiness and receptiveness. And so if my general focus in those interactions is how do we make the most of the time that we have to get both of us to the place we'd like to be? So if someone is unclear about that, it's hard for me to offer support. It's hard for me to provide information or advice to help them get there. So being very clear is very important. I've been told that I'm very good at networking, and yet I would never tell anybody I'm a networker. And that's not so much an issue of semantics, but a matter of duty in regards to you build relationships and connections. And networking becomes a platform for doing so. So when people have objectives that are simply transactional, I want to learn about every opportunity, and as a consequence of meeting with you, position myself to be an ideal candidate. That's one aspect of it, but it's incomplete if it stops there. So in the same way that my colleagues are talking about knowing what you bring to the table, you never go anywhere empty-handed. Being very clear about how you can contribute is especially important if you know what it is that you'd like to gain. So that's what I mean when I talk about building connections and making linkages, because at the end of the day, it's all about the relationships and the interactions and the positive experiences that you have that allow you to want to access that in a professional capacity or a personal capacity down the road. I don't know about everyone else, but I spend a lot of my waking hours at work, and I like it to be as pleasant as possible. So I'm really fortunate. I work with a whole team of awesome, and that team of awesome just fuels good things, good work. We're a small but mighty team, but it is a sweet spot that allows you to just lift yourself and each other up continually, because there are no lowered expectations in government. I recognize that there are perceptions that you can kind of coast. I can't even coast on my ride to work, never mind when I get there. So those things are important, and that's the kind of thing that a lot of people are looking for, and the most progressive places are looking for. I call it synergy, but it comes with a combination of the competencies, the disposition, and the character that you bring. And don't keep it a secret. If you have goodness to bring, show it. And so if your goodness is something that you shouldn't put online, don't show it. But it's just being clear about that, right? You have a degree, you have skill sets. So my undergraduate degree was in sociology and law and society, distilling what skill sets that came with. At the time, I was the leader of the Sociology Undergraduate Student Association. Those kinds of skill sets and distillations allow you to translate it into something that is easy for people to see what you can contribute. So I would encourage you to reimagine what you have to offer that way, so that you can help people help you.
The only thing I can add is, as much as you reach out to network, a lot of times if you happen to get like a temporary assignment for 2 weeks, whatever, 3 months, and you're a great worker, you're a go-getter, you show ambition and drive, your manager loves you. At the end of the day, your manager will be the one to network you if your assignment is coming to an end. And this happens a lot where I'm from, in human resources. And a lot of the assignments are, especially with the administrative assistants in recruitment, you come in, you work in a temporary assignment, and you're driven. So basically, they're gone, finding something else. So we have to keep filling the position. And a lot of times, it is temporary, because it's involving funding and how long we can, keep that person there based on funding. But any event, if you're a good worker, you'll find that if your assignment's coming to an end, if you have a good manager, he or she will reach out to other managers within their ministry or division or branch, and they will network you. They'll reach out and they'll ask another colleague or manager that they're familiar with and say, you know what, I have this individual whose assignment's ending. Unfortunately, we can't extend them for whatever reason. They'll reach out and say, do you have anything? And it has been done, and I've witnessed it. So as much as you can reach out and network, if you have a temporary assignment, you do have that opportunity where you have your manager also doing the work for you, is networking and reaching out to find you work as well. So there is that opportunity.
So let's say you call somebody for coffee or informational interview, and you get that 15 to 20 minutes. What does it mean to have a meaningful conversation? One way is to ask intelligent questions, and I think he's already kind of touched on that. A practical example is, let's say instead of asking, tell me about your organization, maybe say something intelligent like, I understand your organization's recently gone through change. What does that look like for you? What challenges have you faced? What would a professional need to do to support that change right now in your office? Something like that would come across. Yes, it's a question, you're looking for an answer, but really you've communicated your intelligence to the person, and that makes you more memorable as well.
I would just add one more thing too. A lot of people will come to, particularly when you're a student, you don't have a lot of experience, you just say, I want a job, any job. So, we don't hear from you exactly what it is that you're really interested in. And I'm thinking of a summer student last year who came to us and said, I want a job in working in IT related things. And I said, well, I only have one position, and then I was just working on a web page and looking at a resume. You'll be absolutely bored in this position. So I said, call a manager that I used to work with at INIT because they have a lot more, like that projects that deal with a lot of much more detailed stuff. And he contacted them and got a summer job there. So, you know, if you're upfront about what you want to do, we can direct you to where you might be able to get that kind of job.
Knowing what company you want to work for, knowing what the department does, finding out what the professionals do who you're actually trying to connect with. All of these things are very important because it's a way for you to impress people. Job search is very much of a way for you to sell yourself, right? So the more information that you know, the more thoughtful questions that you have, the better impression you are going to make. If you want to learn more when it comes to informational interviews, questions that you can ask, how to make a great first impression, please come visit the Career Center. We do have job advisors there who will be able to walk you through this process. We do mock interviews. We do anything to kind of help you prepare with this whole aspect of having to sell yourself. So come and visit us when it comes to those things. And thank you very much for that. So my next question, what are some of the common problems that you've seen in students' job search in their application? What essentially leads to certain students being eliminated from the whole process?
Too much information, too many pages. I think we have a limit of what, 5? And when you're starting out looking, you do get a little excited and you want to put everything on there, right? And sometimes it can be 10 pages, 15 pages, you're putting all your certificates and designations and you're trying to impress, but at the same time, it's too much, right? So try to limit yourself, try to focus if you are applying for a specific posting, stick to what the job ad is wanting, basically, and stick to the skills and knowledge that's required of the position, and try as much as you can to identify and demonstrate those skills. If you are doing the more networking where you're connecting with people, I know I've had some that have done it through email, reaching out, or through phone messages. One thing is to be ambitious and driven and showing that you're interested and you're wanting it that bad, but sometimes it could turn into harassing, right? So you don't want to get to that stage because it's going to be more of a turnoff than someone saying, you know what, I know this person really wants it, they want to get in and they're driven to get a job in the OPS, but at the same time there is a fine line, right? So that's basically all I have, is that whatever you do, show that you're interested, but also try to have that fine line. I have experience in my early years of recruitment where now everything is done online, right? Back in my time, everything was done through the fax. So we've had applicants applying.
What's a fax?
What's a fax? We've had applications coming in through the fax machine and getting clogged up by 1 or 2 individuals trying to get themselves out there by applying to the same position 20 times, submitting their applications through 20 times, and you got like stacks of paper that's like this for one job. So things like that, you know, be realistic and understand that it is a competitive process and you're not the only one that's applying, or you're not the only one interested in getting into the OPS. So just be a little conscious of that when you're trying to get or applying for a job.
So I've not experienced the harassment option, and I'd like to maintain that, just to be clear. So from my perspective, I've been accused of being an optimist, so that's the perspective I'm going to offer. In general, I think it's always helpful when people are clear about what they're looking for in terms of opportunities, what they have to offer, and how they envision themselves providing a contribution. Your credentials are one dimension of it. It is not a statement about how you will fare. Because when you go to convocation, other people are going to have the same credentials, and that's not you. So how do you add to it? What am I going to get access to from a talent perspective that is unique to you? And you know, I know that we're in an era of cloning and 3D photocopiers, but there's only one you. So what is it that is just optimal and valuable for this organization to benefit from in experiencing your skill sets, your talents, and your willingness to learn? I'm a big fan of humility. So I tend to have a preference for that. And when I say humility, it's not about self-deprecation. It is about enough knowledge to recognize this is my starting point. I'm a university student. I have really great learning experiences, learning capabilities. I want to build a career, and this is where I am in that process. And here's what I'd like to learn. And that's really helpful as well. It is still a place that I actually anchor myself from in my career in terms of how I engage with leaders. And I find that it just makes the road that much smoother. In other aspects, how that translates in terms of the resumes I see, again, if they're particularly long or they're particularly convoluted, it makes it difficult for me to pick out the skill sets or the attributes that can be built upon to advance the work that we're doing within the team I lead and within which I work. So be very clear about what it is that, again, you're looking for. One of the things that didn't get mentioned is on the OPS career site, there are career streams. Government categories of work are not always intuitive. But there are about 8 career streams, and they're profiled on the website, and they can give you an idea of the titles that correspond to the kind of work that is done. So that, again, can help you engage in the conversation, because the more you're able to effectively communicate with someone and say, I want to be involved in the policy or program development, whatever the case may be, the higher your likelihood of having that align with your goals comes together. The other thing I would add is that I think some resilience is a beautiful thing to have, simply because you might not get what you want on the first go, but that's the whole point. It's the first go. It doesn't mean that there isn't another opportunity or another chance or another path for you to get to a sweet spot. And I think you need to be really focused on the sweet spot of how big, bright, and powerful your future is, with your effort, your talent, and your focus being the fuel that gets you there. I don't care what the statistics say. You're here for a reason. You have a lot to offer, and there are customized opportunities that only you can do with flair and finesse that are waiting for you wherever they are. So don't be afraid to seek them.
So I've screened, I would say, thousands of resumes. I screen them myself. HR does offer advice, but I definitely look at them myself. I look at all of them. In a communication stream, saying something in a short, succinct fashion is more valuable than telling me the 15 different things you've done. So that is something that I would impart upon you. The other thing I would say, and this would kind of run the gamut of regardless of where you're looking at to make a connection. For me, what resonates in an interview, and I'm definitely noticing this as I kind of work with more and more senior leaders in the Ontario Public Service, it's really being able to talk about what skills you bring, but talk about them in a very succinct story. I think folks that are great storytellers, especially within the Ontario Public Service, do a really good job at interviews, and then do a really good job at kind of building relationships with the senior leaders that you actually have to end up working with at these tables. Something that was imparted on me as I was kind of learning and building upon my own interview skills within the OPS was kind of taking your story, so taking that example of that good project you've worked on, giving it a beginning, so kind of being able to lay the context of what you've done, giving it a solid middle, and being able to talk about what your contributions were specifically to that particular initiative, and then being able to round it out and providing a bit of a summary of, okay, so I did this, here was my part, here's how I helped, and here's how I wrap it up. The ability to do that will be one of your #1 skills in any job you actually get into. I like to joke that the only reason I ever get promoted is because I'm a storyteller. So I was never the best writer, I was never the best media relations guy, but I'm really good at providing a succinct story. And when you have, 4 minutes to brief somebody, because really that is what happens. You're in the room with a politician and they say, give it to me in 30 seconds. You got to give it to them in 30 seconds. So that's something you learn to do in an interview opportunity and then ultimately use as a skill within your actual day-to-day job. So that would be the one thing I'd ask you to take away.
There's a big emphasis on being concise and being clear when you're doing your not only networking, but if you're ever speaking to a representative or recruitment consultant, etc. You want to make sure that you're identifying what your transferable skills are, again, what you would like to achieve out of the position that you're going for, and again, what you bring to the table. A couple of the other things that I'd like to highlight for this part of it, one of the biggest obstacles that I see for new people outside the OPS trying to gain access is that initial application hurdle. I know specifically within correctional services, I see a number of correctional officers apply, and they have great experience, great work experience, great educational background, but they're not passing through that initial application. And what we're finding when we're tracking them, again, normally we don't actually screen our resumes. They're either sent to a third party or HR from government services does it for us. But what we find is when we pull someone, so say if they don't make it through, we can call their resume if they ask for a debrief, and what we're finding is they don't use the resume guide. So private sector application process versus public sector, what they're looking for out of the structure and content in the resume cover letter is often quite different. Again, as they mentioned, it's really important to be concise, clear, to the point. These are my transferable skills. Here are my examples. This is what I bring to the table that would be beneficial to this position. And what I find is when we coach people that haven't used the cover letter guide and then we coach them to use it, we're finding that they screen through afterwards. So sometimes it's not a matter of, having the right skill sets, is how you explain it. And again, just because you have, say, 5 pages for your resume cover letter doesn't mean you necessarily need to fill all that. If you can get all that pertinent information in there in 2 to 3 pages, then that's all the better. So that's another really useful tool to get into the OPS. I find that's what the biggest obstacle I see from applicants is. And so I really stress the use of that guide as well.
One of the biggest ones is that people have a tendency, especially younger people or just anybody who's not working right now and they're desperate for a job, they'll just photocopy 100 resumes and just send them off and just hope for the best. That's just purely random. It might work, but more often than not, it doesn't. You really need to take the time to gear your resume to the job, and we try to make that as easy for you as you can. So a lot of people don't understand the process. Before we post a job, we identify the top skills that we're looking for, and we figure out how we're going to rank them when we're marking, and we do mark your resume and your interview process. So when you look at our job postings, there's a section, I can't remember what it's called, I think it's what we're looking for. Yeah. So, and basically everything that we're looking for is listed there in the order of importance. So make sure that you're taking the time to gear your resume to those things. And the top ones are the most important ones. The bottom ones, you don't necessarily need. So that's one of the biggest problems I see is like, you look at the resume, you can tell they've got the experience, but they haven't taken the time to identify that. So I can't actually score you on it unless you write it in your resume or in the interview process if you say it. So you'll see us in the interview process, there'll usually be 2 or 3 people on the panel, and we have this page with all the questions, and we're just sitting, we're not even looking at you, we're just writing and writing and writing. So the more that we're able to write down, that means that you're answering the questions that we want you to answer. So make sure that those the way you answer it isn't just like a yes or no answer. We're looking for really detailed, and we're looking for examples. So don't just tell me, I have experience in communications. Say I got it by doing this and this and this and this. An example I have is we did a student hiring, I think 5 or 6 years ago, and a lot of them were the ones that we call them, I don't know if you call them in other ministries, but the jock resumes. They're the ones whose only real experience is in some sport. And too often, they'll try to say, well, I communicated by talking to my teammates or something like that. Well, that's not really relevant. But there was one that really stood out to me, and he really took the time. He understood that he wanted to get into communications. So it was in some really weird sport, too. I think it was I can't even remember now, but he had taken the time. He got involved with the association or whatever was the league, and he launched a newsletter, and he got involved in all these different things. So that there was a lot of experience. He really took the time to do it and understand how that was going to fit into his career. So he got the job. And another resume I remember seeing, I opened it, because they all come to us in Word, and she forgot to turn off the track changes. And so the entire thing was just marked up, and at first I thought, oh my God, what is this? But then when I looked, I realized she really took the time to gear her resume to the job posting. So again, she got an interview. So those are some of the key things that you really got to take the time to do it. It's not going to happen randomly with the government. I think you mentioned a lot of times we have 250, I think the most I've seen is about 1,600 applicants for a job. So if you want to get it, you're not going to get it by a generic news release. or industry resume.
Just going off of that, again, it's important to understand, our job ads are probably the most transparent job ads in the world. Literally what we put there is what we're scoring you on. It's just like when you're in school. Your teacher gives you an assignment, a project, and they give you a rubric. They say, I'm going to score you on these things. Here's level 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how they mark it. And you almost know exactly what they're going to score you on. And so really you just got to provide what they're looking for. And so our job ads are the exact same way. Everything we put on those job ads sometimes are word for word in a rubric that's obviously hidden because it's scored, it's weighted. And so if you go by what's on the job ad and you talk to that specifically, that's how you're going to get scored. And that's why also it's important to be specific about your examples. For us, the big word is demonstrating. You don't know how many times we get people writing resumes, I've got excellent communication skills. Anybody can write that. So you don't get a score for that, nothing at all, unless you say, I've demonstrated communication skills by doing A, B, and C. And to us, there's different levels of communication. Answering the phone is different than briefing a deputy minister. So being very specific about those examples and how you demonstrate it is really important in the way that we write resumes. But to go back to the original question, which is, some of the things we've seen, I think coming out of school, I'm assuming a lot of you don't have like 10 or 20 years of work experience yet. So one of the biggest things I think the employer is looking for in young people is professionalism, maturity, and business etiquette. I think those are very basic things, but they're important. They're the soft skills that get you noticed. For example, I had a summer student, I don't fault her for this, but I just remember it. I was kind of the hiring manager because I was hiring her onto the summer school program, and she kept spelling my name wrong. And Angela is not a difficult name to spell, and it's just, it's not her fault, but the thing is, when she does that to me, I'm a little worried that when I put her on a client portfolio, she's writing my client managers, sometimes could be directors, deputy ministers, what if she's writing their names wrong, or candidates in the public? So it's a trust issue too, right? So that kind of maturity, professionality is important for you to show. Professional etiquette, so we talked a lot about informational interviews. If you ask someone for coffee, it's etiquette to pay for their coffee, things like that. Or if they land you a job somewhere, so for example, a student came to me and I sat down with her, and actually just so happened one of my hiring managers was looking for somebody, hooked her up, she got a job. I never heard back, so I actually didn't know she got the job or not until the hiring manager told me, a few months later that, oh, I need a, offer letter for her. Would have been nice when you have those professional connections to link back, because you just never know, It's just that kind of professional courtesy that is important in the business world. Anywhere you go, not just the government, anywhere you go, that's going to get you further, because you don't know when you're going to see these people again, and so that's important.
That example, though, is my point about the difference between networking and building a relationship. The closure or the absence of the closure is what I know I'm going to remember. The absence of it is what you also remember. And that is not necessarily part of the brand you want to have associated with yourself. And so that's why I was talking about the relationship, the linkages, and the connections, because if getting a job is such an important objective for you, and someone is creating the conditions for you to access it with greater ease, thank you is a minimum that you can offer in return.
Especially for students who don't necessarily have a lot of job experience, particularly in the areas that you're looking to get into, it's important to find ways to at least show that you've tried to get some experience. I know from a communication standpoint, what's impressed me with people who don't have that experience, on the job in communications, is they've taken the time to get involved in volunteer things. Whether it be here at school, volunteering with the local student newspaper or something like that, or I did a lot of work in when I was trying to start my career out in the not-for-profit sector, because they don't have very much funding, especially for things like communications. They just don't have the funding for it, so they're looking for volunteers. Especially, you can get onto boards too, which is a really impressive. It looks good on your resume, and it shows that you've taken the time to get some experience that you didn't necessarily have on your resume. So it looks like you're trying to fill out your resume and really trying to make the effort.
When I was sitting where you are, years ago looking for a job, I was so intimidated. Everyone kept talking about networking, and I hated it because it's so intimidating when you feel like are you using people? It's a very intimidating thought to go up to strangers and try to network. But as Lisa said, when you're trying to build a genuine relationship, it's not intimidating. When you actually meet people and you are genuine about wanting to know them, wanting to understand them, and also that two-way stream. You know, that's actually happened to me before, where, you know, manager has sat with me, and then years later, his daughter's looking for a job, and I'm in recruitment. And now it's a, you know, hey, I'm cool, I'm gonna help them out. Like, it's a relationship. So build it, think of it as a relationship, and then you won't feel so guilty or foreign to the idea of networking.
And don't get intimidated by the government too. I find some people are afraid, oh my God, it's like the RCMP is going to check me out or something. But more often than not, it's like, oh my God, thank God, I desperately need somebody, you know. So we're usually more than willing to talk to people.
Respecting the actual, you know, the mutually beneficial relationship that you're about to create. So just to summarize on some of the points that were brought up during this question, really important to find your niche, right? What is it about you that sets you apart? Yes, your education is important. Yes, it's going to allow you to build a lot of skills, but it's up to you to display those skills to employers and to show them that you actually have those skills. And more importantly, how are those skills going to help, say for example, a problem that needs to be solved within the department or some type of need that they may have. These are all important things for you to consider when you are actually networking and when you're reaching out. Another very important point here is targeting your resume. You know, making sure that you're using the job posting that is provided to you as a cheat sheet. All of the information is there. They're telling you exactly what it is that they're looking for. So include that key information from the job postings into your resumes so you can make it past whatever screening system is there, whether it's an actual person, a third party, or a computerized system as well.
We don't use computerized systems.
Wonderful.
Ever.
Perfect. So the fact, and it's wonderful that you're actually looking through the resumes yourselves, because it really brings me to the point of make it easier for them. You know,
Amen.
really outline what important things there are. Yes, go ahead.
No, sorry, I just had a sort of
Oh, sorry.
Pentecostal moment of amen.
Yes.
Make it easier for
Oh,
us.
sorry. Go ahead.
And I would just say, if you look at it from our perspective, when we're actually hiring somebody, we're not just hiring them short term, especially if it's a full-time contract. I've had people tell me, this is a multi-million-dollar decision I am making to commit to someone. So for me, it's incumbent on me to actually go through that resume to make sure I'm bringing in the best possible person I can for myself and the government, right?
Exactly. It's very similar to when you go out and you're trying to purchase a big ticket item, right? You're not going to purchase that item unless you know that that item can meet your needs. So it works the same way when you're applying for a job. Make it easy for them, let them know how you can meet their needs. So wonderful, wonderful advice there.